What's up, social media family? Coming to you live with Nomi and Effie. Yeah, little babies. This is the best space for them to stay quiet and calm while streaming live. I'm just gonna take a few breaths while people join in and say hello when you come on in. Let me know who's here and where you're at in the world, how your day is going, or maybe your evening. And just pausing for that moment of presence together. You know, how often do we have this moment of presence that we can just pause and be together? So for my fam on Instagram, what's up, Roz, Mr. Walls, and oh, bye, Effie. And we've got some beloveds on Facebook here. I'm gonna try to stream to both of y'all beautiful communities at the same time. So the share that wants to come through is something that has been really resting in my heart for the last several weeks, really months now, it feels like. Just waiting for the divine time to come on and talk about it, share about it, be about it. Right? Once it's been fully integrated and realized from within, that's when I'm usually guided to go and share. So the title of this is We Get to Be Both. We get to be balanced, we get to be unified, we get to be whole. And I'm feeling great, Mr. Walls. Thank you so much for asking. How you doing? So we get to be both. This is something that's so prevalent in our world today as we, journey through this end of patriarchy, as we journey into what's to come from here, as we create new systems and new structures and new ways of being in this world. Something that I see and then I once played into myself as well is a perpetuation of division between our hemispheres, our left-right brain, between our feminine, masculine, between yin, yang. It's a division that takes place. And that division, in its disguise of health and wholeness, says that one archetype, the masculine, is structured, is the protector, is safety, security, strength. It is order and organization, it is action. And one archetype of energy, magnetism, the feminine, is receptive, is soft, is curvature, right? Flow, is sensuality, sensitivity, emotional intelligence, creativity. And as we go through this path of awakening, we start to come into our own truth. And since we have this delusion of a feminine body or a masculine body, it creates a lot of confusion internally about what the heck is really happening here. And those in feminine bodies during this fall of the patriarchy, it's all about giving the voice to the feminine, giving power to the feminine, giving purpose to the feminine through the divine feminine rising, which is beautiful to an extent. And in that world, because not everyone's living in that world, there is then talk about, well, I'm very grounded in my masculine today. I'm creating structures and I'm bringing in order and I'm taking action. And something that has been, just really, really deep in my own journey of dissolving and becoming both, dissolving the separation and becoming both, is that there's actually everything in the universe operates in threes, sixes, and nines, right? So the original inception of a spark splits into three. It doesn't split into two. So our binary, our duality, our polarity is a limitation of our true cosmic nature, which is the Trinity. So what happens from electricity and magnetism, right? These fundamental energetics. We have energy, electricity, and we have magnetism. Well, there's a third aspect of that. And that third aspect is what happens when those two combine. What happens when we become both? When we unify, when we come together. The third omnipotence, omnipresence, unified whole spark emerges, where we get to be both. Where our feminine magnetism is both emotional and structured. Where the masculine electricity is both the protector and sensitive. The more we label, this is me embodying the masculine, or this is me embodying the feminine, the more we separate, the more we divide. And the more we separate, the more we divide, the more we feed the program of separation that has allowed us to get to this point in time in humanity where we are divided, where we don't trust each other, where we don't trust ourselves, where we don't trust half of our makeup. That division is creating the pain. That division is creating the suffering. That division is creating the fear of each other and of ourselves. And the more that we, in the light worker community, the more that we, those who identify as people who are waking up in consciousness, who are choosing to be a force for change and transformation by going in and digging through the cobwebs and the old ancient karmas and shadows and patterns that have been perpetuated for centuries, and starting to bring them to the surface of our awareness so that we can process, integrate, and heal them. The more that we continue to divide, we're actually fooling ourselves and not going anywhere. Because the future is unified, the future is whole, the future is balanced. And nature, the universe, always strives for balance. Hi, you want to come back up here? Balance. Balance, isn't it right, babies? Yeah. The Trinity is now returned. It's why we got two instead of one. Isn't that right? Okay, I digress into my child's innocence, who just absolutely loves these little creatures. They're so freaking cute. So being in this space and time where we are really dissolving the separation that has been. And our next race, our next root race of humanity, where humanity is evolving into, is into the both, is into the third phase of energy, which is unison, is when it's electromagnetism, is when it comes together. It's the androgynous template, where we are no longer identified as feminine, masculine, as penises and vaginas. And if you've journeyed or connected to beings who are at a further evolutionary track than humanity currently is, they don't have reproductive organs. They don't have genitals. They don't even produce offspring in the same way that we do through sex. So for us right now, we need to be incredibly wise that we're not shifting into more imbalance at this pivotal time of realization that there has been a grave imbalance happening on the planet. And through that realization, not trying to tip the scales into the opposite, Going into a matriarchy is not the answer. We've done that. We've been there. And Egypt fell as well. So we have to be mindful that we don't go in that direction. And that's what happens when we continue to separate. So when we continue to place one archetype as being all of these things and another archetype as being all these things, instead of merging them together and bringing us into the Trinity. The Trinity is always where we heal. We don't heal in the duality. We don't heal in the polarity. We heal in the Trinity. And the Trinity is where we spiral up. So from that standpoint, what if on a day when you are being structured and ordered and logical and driven and action-oriented, it's not about being masculine. It's just about being soul-inspired and taking aligned action. It's just about how you're showing up. And what if on the days that you're emotional and sensitive and receptive and relaxing and caring for your body, it's not about being feminine. It's simply about showing up and caring for yourself. It's about learning how to relax and to receive from the center. So when we live from the center, when we live from the heart, we live from the unison. So as long as we continue to say, I'm in my masculine when I'm structured and ordered, and I'm in my feminine when I'm soft and emotional, we live from the mind. We live from the separation of our hemispheres. And that separation of our hemispheres is one of the greatest pains to the human species, because there is a part of us that is innately divided. No chewing up this book, please. Thank you. So when there's a part of us that is internally divided, then when we live from that space, we're going to stay divided. And division keeps us separated. Division is what has created different countries. It's created war to protect those countries, to protect our division. And it even existed before governance and countries were developed. In the native tribes, they had their sections of land. And if you came in and merged and one was feeling that that was not a good idea, they would fight for that land. They'd fight for their tribe to survive, because we're operating from that experience of separation. And that only exists within our mind, within the hemispheres that are happening up in our brain. And if we talk about this living through our hearts, being the future, being the answer, when we're in our heart, we're in our unison, we're in our oneness, we're together, then we must realize that all the times that we separate, and we might not actually be thinking we're separating, I can, let's say, make an educated statement that when a woman or a man who is consciously awakening within themselves and they are doing their due diligence to bring their feminine or their masculine online, and when a man says, you know, I'm awakening my feminine, I'm learning how to connect to my emotions, which is a step on the journey. It's a very important step on the journey. Ooh, don't fall, buddy. That allows us to move towards unison, that allows us to move towards the synarchy, the wholeness, the heart center. When we stop there, though, we stay in division. What's happening? What's happening? Oh, yes, we just want some love. So that pivotal point on the journey that says, okay, I'm in a woman's body and it's time for me to awaken my masculine and heal the masculine within, heal electricity within me, feel safe and secure within my body as a sovereign being. That is an important step on the path but it's not the end destination. And I know that many who are drawn into this microcosm that is a Helmna, they're interested in what comes next. Where are we going from here? And this is to just plant a spark, plant a seed for where to from here. And that where to from here is once we have awakened our electricity and our magnetism, and we have become activated within both hemispheres of our brain. The next phase is bridging those hemispheres. And the way that we bridge hemispheres that are innately separate is through bringing that energy down through our spinal column, down through our spine, and into our heart center. When we fully live through our heart, we will no longer be identified as masculine or feminine, as penises or vaginas. We will truly be androgynous beings. So when we're in action, and when we're in strength, vitality, when we're in sensitivity, receptivity, emotional intelligence, we will simply be that. It won't be about being in our masculine or in our feminine. Up, down. It will simply be an energy that we are showing up as in a moment so that we can be proactive in our highest timeline, in what is in the highest and best for us in that moment. And it has nothing to do about the division. So as we start to move forward, it's very important that we remember we get to be both. And when we're truly both, when we truly activate both hemispheres of our brain, our logic and our imagination, right? Electricity and magnetism, they merge together. And there's a lot of really beautiful channels that exist between the two hemispheres of the brain that allow for that synapses of the neural pathways to spark. Because as it stands now, in the shadows, the left hemisphere fears the right. It cannot logically make sense of what the right hemisphere of the brain taps into. It cannot logically make sense of archetypes, symbols, etheric matter. It cannot logically make sense of what a black hole is, so it just decided, let's just call it a black hole because we can't actually make sense of it. It can't logically make sense of the right brain DNA in our body, which the left brain has decided it's going to just be junk because we can't make sense of it. It's in all these windy, weaving patterns that have no logical order. So it's junk. Black holes, junk DNA. This is the manifestation of a reality where the left brain's afraid of the right. And that has manifested in our physical reality as what we call patriarchy, where left brain dominates the right. And since we have materialized in form from that, left brain dominates the right. Then we have materialized in form a world where penises, men, have more power than vaginas or women. But it has nothing to do with magnetism and electricity. It's all about separation. Because when we really start to see the hologram, we can see that there are a lot of vaginas that have left brain dominance and are using the same patriarchal tactics to rise into certain echelons of power and control. That allows us to see that it really is not about men in the physical sense. It's not about a masculine. It's about the division that's happening between our brain. Our brain is literally in a rivalry with itself because of the separation. And that separation is due to a lot of retroviruses that came into the human species during Atlantis. Our brain is not to be separated. It's to be unified and whole. And since it was separated, our journey of returning to wholeness is moving down into our heart space. And to actually get there, we dissolve all labels of masculine and feminine. We dissolve all separatism. We dissolve the difference between strength and weakness and just recognize the body, the form. We come into our heart and simply allow ourselves to show up in our highest and best in every single moment without identifying it as anything. Because the moment we identify something, we label something, we separate it from something else. And that separation doesn't exist in our heart space. It only exists in our mind. So as much as we are doing our absolute best right now to come to that stage, recognizing that first and foremost, this is a pivotal stage of awakening these different parts of ourselves, bringing them online, understanding electricity, understanding magnetism, because it's through the unison of the two that we enter into the Trinity, that we enter into what will manifest in our body as androgyny, and what will manifest in our body as a total dissolution of a lot of old school ways of relating, because we won't even be required to have intercourse with each other in order to create another life. It will simply be born through divine idea, through divine inspiration, through divine spark. You want to get down? Yeah? Here you go, baby. So, why this is really coming up in this moment now is because we're in a time where so much is changing. It's changing so fast, and we are the ones who are a part of that change. We are the ones that are stewarding this movement forward. And it is so important for us to be at all times recognizing what our end goal is for the next step of this game. And then we have another one after that, and then another one after that. We just keep going and evolving and growing and expanding. Right now, what our goal as a species is coming into unity, is coming into androgyny, is coming into a dissolution of labels, separation, division, identification. So as much as it can be abundant for us to separate, I work with women, I work with men. I'm for the divine feminine rising. I'm for the awakening of the divine masculine. What we're doing is continuing to feed into the fields separation. Recognize, though, that that's not bad or wrong. It's simply a step. What comes next? What comes after men have awakened within them their emotional intelligence, their soft, nourishing, nurturing fluidity? What comes next? And what comes next for women when they have awakened within their biology the ability to provide and create structure and order and action and protection for themselves? What comes next? For both, it comes back into the center. We come back into our heart and we unify completely and we dissolve those labels altogether. And that's what makes us whole. That's what truly brings us into our hearts. So every time we use these labels, we separate, we're living from the mind, as much as it might feel like we're living from our hearts. When we live from our heart, there is no label. There is no separation. There is no identification. There is simply a unified field. And there are many chambers within our hearts. We don't just have a front of our heart chakra or a back of our heart chakra. There's many chambers that are to be opened when our heart fully opens and blossoms and expands, that connects and plugs us into the unified field. I've experienced this only twice in this life. Twice in this life, I have experienced this heart center become completely opened in all chambers and plug into every single thing around me, and I'm fairly sure I was levitating in that moment, because that was the power. And when I go into dream space, when I go into timelines that are simultaneously happening now, that are linearly appearing to be in the future, the way this human body lifts up and flies, which is a part of our evolutionary journey, is through a heart opening up its full expansive, vibrating, lifting us literally up off the ground. Our heart is what allows us to fly. So the next evolution of the awakening of everything within our potential, every dormant genetic code within us, awakening, all happens through our hearts. Happens through us coming back continually into our heart, dissolving everything that keeps us separate, everything that keeps us divided, and unifying. And I mentioned in the title the law of expectancy. This is a universal law that I've been recently really tuning into, because certain patterns kept showing up that didn't make sense until I recognized that there was an expectation for it to be that way. There is an expectation in our collective unconscious for men to be the providers, for men to create the safety and the structure and the action, and for women to be the mothers, to be the nurturers, to be the emotional intelligence. That expectation is dormant within our collective unconscious. So that's what we continue to manifest. So the law of expectancy is what we expect is what we receive. And that expectation is usually deep within ourselves. And a big piece of the process of really allowing myself to come into this law of expectancy was first and foremost releasing the spiritualized ego's delusion that said expectations lead to disappointment. That essentially wanted expectations to be no more. Don't have any expectations, you'll always be disappointed. Well, there's an actual universal law called the law of expectancy. What you expect, you receive. And our expectation, when we're truly in expectancy, our whole being is behind it. Our emotions are expecting it. Our beliefs are expecting it. Our body is expecting it. And because of the way expectancy is born through us, it comes from the patterns that we have experienced. So we expect what we experience. So as a collective, we are currently expecting for men to be one way and women to be another way. We are expecting separation. We're expecting division. We're expecting labels. We're expecting personality. We're expecting ego. So that's what we're continuing to manifest. So a lot of times when I'm working with clients and we're breaking through, why is this pattern continuing to show up financially, relationally, in your career, in your romances, in your health? Is because somewhere within you there's an expectation for that pattern, because you've been experiencing it over and over and over and over and over again. You expect it to be that way. And so that's what you'll receive. So when we change our expectations, we change our beliefs, we change our emotions, we change how we feel in our bodies, we change our vibration, we change multidimensionally, and we start experiencing new patterns. And those new patterns, the more that we choose to proactively expect this new pattern to break that old pattern, the more that we will start to create validation internally that expects that in the future. Now, what's a conversation that I had, this is the best way to go into this, a conversation that I had with a client a couple weeks ago was about the energy of doubt. Doubting spirit to be all providing. Doubting that we could just relax and let go and we will receive, that all of our needs will be met, or we could trust spirit, our biology, trust the earth, trust the universe, trust God to be the source of our supply. And the conversation was around having many experiences that validated faith, that validated trust, that validated that the universe is actually all providing, that we can let go of force and fully allow ourselves to receive. Yet, even with 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 experiences of faith, of all the reasons why we can just surrender and trust, that doubt is still there. And what I received in this moment was that because we are epigenetically influenced, meaning we are influenced by our environment, we are influenced by each other, we are influenced by our ancestry, we are influenced by these patterns and stories that have been, where we might have 50 experiences that validate spirit as all providing, that validate trust and faith in the universe and God. Our genome, our human, has centuries of evidence that validate doubt, that validate that the universe doesn't have our back, that validate that God is not all providing, that validate that I have to work hard and force and push my way to the top in order to feed my family and put a house over my head, that validate war. So as we continue to move forward, we can never stop our devotion to unity, to expecting this new paradigm that we're all here feeling humanity is ready for, this evolution that this planet is going through, that humanity is a pivotal piece of. We cannot stop and say, okay, I've had 50 experiences that validate trust, it's all going to be groovy now. Because as we continue to evolve, we start to go deeper into processing and releasing the karmic, ancestral, societal, familial, karmic gunk, the tar, that has centuries worth of evidence to invalidate trust and faith. And as we bring more light, more consciousness into our microcosm, we start to penetrate into that tar. And it's like sun blasting down on pavement, starting a fire that opens it up. And as it opens, that tar goozes up. It goozes up, it goozes up. That's what consciousness is doing every time we expand. It's blasting this powerful light into all the tar in our DNA. Into all the tar in these retroviruses that have shaped the human genome. And it starts to bubble it to the top. Starts to bring it up and bring it up and bring it up. So we can never for a moment allow the spiritualized ego to say, I'm there. I'm unified and whole, even though I'm still talking about embodying my masculine and embodying my feminine, which is innately division. I'm awakened. I'm enlightened, even though I still can't create financial abundance for myself and I'm struggling and suffering every day, I'm enlightened, y'all. Right? That's labeling something, separating something, and not appreciating our wholeness, and not actually trusting that the universe is all providing. When we are living within that, we are never struggling, we are never suffering, we never are lacking in finances, in providing for ourselves a beautiful home that nourishes our soul, whatever that looks like for us. It could be a cabin in the woods or a beautiful mansion on the coast of Rome, like whatever. I don't even know if Rome's on the coast of Italy. Rome is not on the coast. Okay. So from that standpoint, anything that's keeping us in those labels, keeping us in the separation, is not our unity, it's not our wholeness. And that's ultimately where we're going. So the story I shared about the Tao is very important because we must recognize that we are constantly evolving right now, and the evolution doesn't stop until the entire species has spiraled up into this next octave. Because until the entire species has gone through that spiraling up, which takes a critical mass point of humans having spiraled up to shift the whole genome up into the gift frequency, that means that we are always going to be processing the ancestral, the collective, the familial tar that has doubt, that has separation, that has fear, that has centuries of stories to validate pain, suffering, war. Why this is being shared is because right now it's so important that we don't get caught up in the glamour, in the illusion of things being all great and things being all light and things being all love. Because the moment that we get there, we start to separate things. We no longer look at the tar or the fear or the suffering. And when we stop looking at it, we get blind swiped by it because it's still within us. We are all one, even though our mind doesn't see that because it's innately separated. We have two hemispheres of our brain. Because the mind doesn't see it, it can very easily separate and compartmentalize even our spiritual journey, which doesn't actually support us in the end. So this idea that we get to be both, we get to be balanced, unified, whole, we get to come together, we get to dissolve separation, we get to move towards our androgynous, instead of, you know, one party's rights or another party's rights. How about human rights? How about species-wide support? How about dissolving gender, dissolving race, dissolving all of the things that separate and divide us and truly come together? Children know how to do this. There are studies of children where there are dolls of different colors, different skin colors on the dolls on the table. And they ask the children different questions about, you know, what doll shares the same skin color as you, or what doll is of this skin color. And the children will often go and grab different colored dolls or grab different colored things because they don't see that. They don't see that separation the way that we have been conditioned to see it as adults. Right? So the children know how to do this, which means we know how to do it because that's always within us. And if we even just look at the structure of our brain for a moment, because I really love to understand this, not only from a metaphysical, not only from a spiritual. I love to understand things in a tangible way that is grounded in science and mathematics because these are fun. I at least think they're fun. I love to geek out over science and math and the universe and spirits and God and imagination and knowledge. Because it's all beautiful when we recognize they all serve a part of the whole. So if we look to our brain and we talk about this separation, there's a part of our brain in the back by our brainstem, which is where our delta waves flow. And this part of our brain is not separated. It's one part tucked up under there, and it's whole, it's complete. Which is why when we're children, we're operating from a delta brainwave state primarily throughout our day, because those higher brainwaves of the frontal cortex have not yet been developed. Children don't see separation. They don't see division. They get upset if you go into those conversations about, oh, that person's that skin color, or that person's that religion, or that person's from that country. This doesn't unify us. So much of our growth potential is actually going in and remembering our innocence. It's going in and connecting to the part of us that knew only love, that was living fully through our hearts and through the deeper brainwaves that haven't quite caught on to separation yet. So law of expectancy, we get to be both. This is everything moving forward. This is changing patterns at a collective level and a personal level, right? If there are stories that are continuing to replay themselves out over and over and over again in your life, where are you expecting that to be the case? And not even realizing it, because you might have changed your beliefs and you might have changed your emotions around it. But that expectation is still there because it has experienced to validate it. And to change expectancy, we have to change it at a cellular level. We have to get our body to experience something new. And then we have to continue to validate it and not stop continuing to validate it when we think we're there. Because at any moment, we might bring in an amount of consciousness that blasts open that amount of tar inside of our DNA that says, no way, this is not a safe environment. You are not safe here. Shut down, close down. Pull us back down. What's happening from here down is so important, right? We cannot live in this spiritualized world from here up. That separates the feminine and masculine, that divides us, that lives in a space of only light and love, that doesn't recognize that our journey as spirit incarnate into form is grounding consciousness all the way down into the core of the earth, which means all the way down through every single one of our energy centers, all the way down through the energy centers in our legs that hold a lot of painful stories. Our deepest karmic gunk stored down in our legs, in our roots, in our feet chakras. And once you really go in and start to process this out proactively, your whole life begins to become lighter, not just from here up. And continuing to separate, continuing to divide, continuing to compartmentalize. That doesn't serve anyone's highest and best. So we're shifting our expectations. We're fully grounding at every part of our being. This is the path that we're being invited on now. Let's see here. What kind of comments came through, if there's any questions. Okay, cool. So, no questions coming in. I'll just respond to the comments in the chat. Appreciate all of you who are open to receiving this, who are open to hearing and to recognizing internally within yourself where you separate, because that's what's going to bring us into wholeness, is through not avoiding it, not denying it, not pretending like we're not doing that by thinking We are merging through identifying this is feminine, this is masculine, this says this is that, which is innately separation. Hi, you want to come back? They want to come back for the end of the program to just give you guys all the unison. So I wish to just share with you all that everything that is shared within this is possible for us. We are incredible, powerful beings. And when we merge, we become even more powerful. When we ground, we become even more capable of manifesting, of creating this new world that is being asked of us now. Because if we don't create it, the earth is going to just to humanity, which is fine. It's a perfect timeline as well. Everything is perfect. That being said, I'm super excited about the timelines where we totally evolve this human body and experience what this human body is capable of. Like, I get so excited about flying, about awakening our full potential, about activating our higher bodies beyond the mental body. It's incredible to visualize those timelines and to see what we create together when we're unified. And that's a big piece of how we play within Let's Vibrate Higher. It's all about doing the inner processes to become whole and balanced and unified and grounded and anchored so that we can fly high. And we commit to that. We become disciples of our daily devotion, of our daily practice. And the next live version of this is in July. It's happening starting July 16th. And it's founded in the laws of expectancy, shifting and re-alchemizing our being so that we expect greatness to move through us, so that we expect abundance to move through us, so that we expect unity, love, togetherness to move through us, and no longer expecting that we always go down to zero in our bank balance once we have a surge of money come in, or we expect that men or women are going to be rude or uncaring or unkind to us, or that we expect that people aren't going to be able to appreciate us when we share our full truth, or we expect that people are going to leave us, or we expect that we're always going to struggle. All those expectations that are living deep in our lower triangle, in our subconscious, we're changing them. And you get to join us. You get to be a part of it. You get to spiral up with us. So if you want to know more about the Let's Vibrate Higher community and this program that is really an accelerator, it's an accelerator. It accelerates your life forward. And I can say that with certainty because this is not the first time that this has gone on. This is the 5th time that this is live with a 98% success rate. That 2% is, well, what's the most aligned way of saying this is a being that was not fully committed. That's all. It was just one little lack of commitment. So I invite you to join us. I invite you to share in this. I invite you to tune in if you resonate with the magic that happens when you become fully embodied, when you become whole and complete, when you dig deep into your roots and you allow the lotus to blossom through you and you begin to fly. So send me a message. I'd love to share with you the details, and we can hop on a call to explore if this is the best, absolute, most aligned and supportive thing for you now. Thank you all so much for being here and for joining me and for being a part of this message and being a part of this earth and being part of this growth and evolution. Thank you so much for dedicating your resources to your own growth and potential, because your growth and potential impacts the whole and we all grow together. I love you all so very much. I hope that you have an amazing day or evening wherever you're at in the world.